Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 456, featuring Faruk Heplevent, who is the founder and CEO of The Scope. Faruk has had a very interesting background. He actually did a lot of stuff in car photography and car advertising with traditional photography, and sort of understanding that evolution, what happened, and it obviously transitioned into CG, which ended up having him found his company called The Scope, which is very interesting to see that transition. Very cool stuff going on there. But he also, his company developed something called The Scope City, which is a groundbreaking way of looking at urban environments for cars, but actually could be done for a number of things. So really interesting to think about it. Highly encourage you guys to, when you listen to the podcast, just go to the episode page and check out the links in there for some of the stuff that they have been developing, which is really, really cool. I will say that this is our last podcast episode for 2023, which is sad, but don't worry, there'll be many, many more happening in 2024. We actually have a blog post out of all the cool episodes that have been out in 2023. So if you want to go back and listen to some of our favorites, just go to our blog at chaos.com and check out the best episodes of 2023, or at least from my perspective. There's been many, many though. So really cool to see that. We do have a couple other announcements as well. I want to notice that Chaos is actually now an official member of the AOUSD, which is the Open Alliance of USD. And we are very excited to be a member of that, along with some really great companies. This is something we feel very strongly about. We feel that there needs to be many more open standards in terms of data formats, especially USD. So we're very excited to be a member of AOUSD. Also, a couple of product announcements. A new one that I want to make sure you guys are aware of is Vantage has update 2.1, which has got some really cool things in there, including hair. Yes, hair is available in Vantage, which is very exciting, as well as displacement. So lots of new stuff. If you guys are big Vantage people, like I am, you will be excited about this new update. Go check it out. I did announce last time that V-Ray 6.2 is out with a lot of new changes. So if you want to check those out, just go to chaos.com. It's available for 3ds Max with all the other DCCs to follow shortly. But I also want to say that Corona 11 is also out. And if you want to know more about those, you can go to corona-renders.com for that. There is one event still happening in 2023. This is our webinar of ArcViz Masterclass for Creative Lighting, hosted by our good friend Nikos Nikolopoulos, and it's happening through the 25th of December. Yes, you can definitely sign up at chaos.com/events. There are going to be several of these that are going to be going on through 2024, so make sure and follow those as well. So just, again, go to chaos.com/events. Now, if you guys want to know more about the podcast, of course, you just go to chaos.com/CG Garage podcast. CG Garage, sorry. You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage podcast for our Facebook page. If you'd like to watch these videos, there are all of our videos available at youtube.com/Chaos Group TV. And if you guys have any other ideas, suggestions of podcasts, like this one was a great suggestion from one of our listeners, just go to labs@chaos.com. Again, that is labs@chaos.com is where you can email us all of your ideas. But for now, please enjoy episode number 456 with Faruk Heplevent.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
So, but what I want to start with, Faruk, is know a little bit more about yourself. Like, how did you get into computer graphics and your interest in the stuff that you do with computer graphics?
Well, my heritage, my upbringing is photography. So I started working as a car assistant, a photo assistant very early. As early as 1989,
okay,
MTV and stuff, right? So it's
wow.
So learned with a very, very cool still life photographer, shooting 8x10, everything in camera. He had his own processing, transparency processing lab and all that jazz. So So learned the craft there, and went assisting for other guys, worked for big car photographers after that. And this is how I got into car photography.
And was this all in Germany?
Yeah. In Germany, I had a few, I was in New York for a few months, tried, but, it's mainly
car photography is very specialized. It's a very special thing. I used to do car commercials myself, so I know.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what makes car photography different.
Well, car photography obviously has, many challenges because you're working with a big object. You need to block streets. You need to get a lot of stuff under control. And also, back after assisting, I worked as a location scout for a while for cars only. And it is, you need to get the right location in the right light. And back then you would have to run to a 1 hour photo store, get it developed, FedEx it out, and, do all these things.
Wow.
And at the same time, you would have to calculate or tell the production that, I'm shooting this now, but you're planning to shoot in 7-8 weeks because, time frames were a bit different. So You're like, the sun is going to be there. So, I was able to read sun charts and do all the calculations and, work with these compasses where you can, I forgot everything, but so then, you needed a lot of technical know-how and craft to actually get the shot. And, some of the guys, the old school guys would shoot 8x10 transparencies on location. Mm-hmm. And it was before Photoshop. So there's a cloud in the sky, boom, they would call a weather day. Boom, gone, everybody goes home. It was crazy. Wow. So, the guys I worked with in Germany started shooting cars on, middle format, 6x7. That was revolutionary. That was like crazy punks, It's, but on 8x10, you expose, and when you do a magic hour shot, and your exposure on 8x10 is by nature long, right? So, and if you close the f-stop, you're at f-stop 64 on an 8x10. You have an 8-minute exposure, right?
Yeah.
And while the sun is going away, so, one of the assistants would constantly get the light reading and calculate how much the exposure needs to be extended because you're losing light. So it was a very, very...
and you also have reciprocity on the film that goes...
Exactly. And then, so you have how many shots, within a sunset, you get 3-4 shots. It's pretty stressful. And then somebody needs to go to the lab, it's a funky business. And, even shooting a Polaroid, you don't have time for the Polaroid. Right. Sometimes some guys, the rich photographers, would have a second camera to shoot Polaroids while they were exposing film.
Right.
To make the client happy. So everything was super duper complicated. That's why I like to say, obviously I have team members that, shoot on film because it's cool. And as a professional, shooting on film it's hell. It was hell.
Yep.
It was not enjoyable at all.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then also, I guess that's why people like to shoot in Iceland because magic hour lasts way longer.
yeah, but also not all year, So
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I remember when I worked on the movie Oblivion, and they were shooting a thing, and they had this whole sequence inside of the stadium. Yeah. And they said it was great because they had like 4 hours of magic hour. It looked like the whole yeah. What about studio lighting? Like how did in terms of studio lighting for cars, did you do that as well?
Yeah, did that as well. And with studios also, that's looking way back into the days was say let's 90s in Germany. There were like 2-3 car studios. There was one in Düsseldorf. The other ones were in Stuttgart and Munich. Nothing in Hamburg back then. Right. And, you had situations where some photographers would get a job because they were the only ones who had a 1200 millimeter lens on 8x10, because the lens was like 50K or something. I don't know, some crazy number. So it was a very, I don't want to say uncreative, but it was uncreative because it was technically so limited what you could do to get the shot. And, in the car studios, you have these huge flying flats that you either light with custom built flashlights or, tungsten lights. You need to light it, then you need to look at a Polaroid, expose the Polaroid for 8 minutes, and everything was tedious. When I look back, I'm like, oh,
Sure.
it's just, it was just, it was not very, very enjoyable. But when I started as a photographer, I worked together with a partner, also, former assistant colleague, and we were the first couple. Now there's a few photo teams out there, and we started and said, okay, we do people and cars, right? So mix it up, and the one that is not shooting has time for the client. So we kind of,
Sure.
I don't know, at least for Germany, I think we were the first ones to do that.
Right.
More of a team approach, which in photography and car photography was quite unusual, because the car photographers had to be such alpha dudes because they're carrying so much risk, responsibility, big production. So you had those types actually behind the camera back in the day.
Right.
Changed a lot, which I find very refreshing. It's more
Yeah,
about creation
interesting.
and not having the money to do it, having the resources, having the equipment. Those were reasons to get the job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What about running footage? Were you doing some running footage as well? You start doing video?
I didn't do film. We did. I went to film school in New York for 3 months, like a private school kind of thing. Looked at that, but photography was more achievable at that point.
Sure.
And we started with Scope. We started doing running, footage 5 years ago, because the projects that we were on are mainly launch projects, car launch projects. And the client said, well, we need stills, yes, but we also need, the web internet is getting, we need, footage. So we went ahead and learned it, essentially.
Sure.
Which also, with CG, I love it, because, you mess it up, you go back, you do it again. Obviously, your time runs out at one point. But
Sure.
Still, you have the possibility to learn compared to on location. Day is gone, money is gone, everything's gone.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to running footage in a minute, because I know how that is a real thing that costs. Traditional running footage costs a ton of money. It's very expensive. But did you move to digital from film? Did you go through that process of going to digital cameras?
I did that as well. So I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, well, it's like I went from 8x10 to smaller. We went from there to digital. And then it's like, AI. I'm like, yeah, AI is a thing. But, it's a thing,
Right. Yeah. So you've seen all of those transitions. And so you're always expecting something that's going to disrupt everything, right?
Exactly. And Photoshop, I've seen Photoshop. We had the same conversations about, I can see it's Photoshopped and it's better when it's shot in camera. It's all, I think AI has fantastic use cases.
Sure.
And the great stuff, somebody's prompting a long time. I render by the time he's finished prompting, or she. So it's
sure.
In some cases. So it's
sure.
It's going to. I love it when AI helps, and it does help in quite a few instances. I, for example, like to speak about. I'm a very bad copywriter, obviously. A photo person, not a big writer.
Right.
I use Jasper for over 2 years now, because it really helps me write.
Sure.
And it's the same for other people, I think, with image creation. And,
right.
It's going to.
So tell me a little bit about, obviously you've gone through transitions. You went through film, you went through digital, and you've gone through all of these different things. So how did you start your studio? Like, how did this all begin?
It started 2007. Essentially, it began because I lost a job to CGI. So I'm like, oh, that's not good. So I need to,
Interesting.
so it's happening, right? So it was, and it was a situation. Obviously, I was aware of CGI, but we were
Around
like,
what year was this?
2007.
Okay.
And I was aware that the car manufacturers were super interested in CGI efficiencies, time saving, all the things that everybody is talking about. But when we lost the job, or the marketing client wanted to work with us, the creative director wanted to work with us, but there was a decision where they say, "Oh, this studio is doing the CGI, and since you guys are not experienced with CGI, you're not getting the job." I'm like, "Oh, okay, hold your horses." It's like, what's going on? So in a way, interestingly, it jumped back to the situation where the guy with the 1200 millimeter lens got the job because he had the lens, which I always felt like, yeah, okay, you have the technology, but that's it. It's technology, right? It's,
yes.
But so markets seem to go through those cycles. It might, jumping over to AI might happen. Somebody might be able to prompt: is it good? Is it bad? Is it correct? Is that person creatively the best to do it? For a while, people will just use AI for AI's sake.
Yeah. That's true.
But so this is how my interest in CGI started. So I opened the scope initially just as a retouching studio for our photography business, and started looking into CGI. But also we learned very quickly that we will not be able to compete with, back then it was RTT. I think they belong to Dassault now, and there was the players, Maccavision.
I worked at a studio called Sway. I don't know if you remember Sway at all back in the day.
I think so, but it's like, so we didn't really have strong. We're technically ignorable, let's say. Not very relevant, but we learned quickly creating locations or sets at that stage was something we could do pretty well, because it needed the creative input, and we focused on light. And up until, I would say, 6.5 years ago, we were rendering Maxwell, and everybody was like, "You guys are." But so, the photorealism in the rendering for stills was what we were after. But obviously we were looking at other things, and then we discovered, we went with V-Ray at that stage. We were able to do film and photo at the same time. But focusing on light fidelity, on space creation, this was something that helped us to get jobs, to be successful, to get into the market. Essentially, there's a guy called Tino Schädler. I'm not sure if you're familiar. He's a very super cool dude out in LA, and he's an architect by training, and he had started designing virtual sets for Hollywood.
Okay.
So, his credits are like V for Vendetta and Harry Potter, and, it's like, and then he built a Grammy stage for Daft Punk, and, coolest dude I know, I would say. Nice guy. But essentially, I read an article about him in the Architectural Digest, and I needed a set. I just called him up, right? And I said, I need a digital set. He's like, "Oh, this is cool, let's do it." And we did a Mercedes job together. Right,
awesome.
So he designed it. So I think back then the whole community was even smaller. So if you said, "Oh, it's a CG," he was designing in CG, so it connected pretty quickly.
Right.
And from there on, we felt, okay, focusing on location creation or set locations, this is successful. Kept doing it. Tried everything, photo scanning sessions, 2009, so we did a lot of things that didn't work. They were just too early. We built a people scan rig that we got actually to work, but it was too early. Also, it was 2017, and then, we gave away the 110 cameras because I don't have So we were all, we're trying to do everything. And in a way, I'm super happy that there's so many people specializing in stuff where I can say, oh, let's go buy the trees from the tree people, and I need a scan. Let's go to the scan people. It wasn't there, right? A couple of years ago, you had to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm really enjoying that, and we keep focusing on locations. This is where we feel strong.
Right. Well, that comes back to your roots of location scouting, right? Now you know
probably,
yeah. So that's probably where it all started. What about has changed in cars in terms of digital works from like 2007? I remember back in those days, getting a car, you'd have to get the CAD data, and it would be way too heavy and expensive, or you would get a scan of a car or a plot of a car, and it would take forever. Like what is the situation now with digital assets for cars?
Well, those processes are much more professional, especially with the car manufacturers, because they know for a long time it is important. And interestingly, they do it differently. Some have in-house editors. Mm-hmm. Some hire the Mackevisions, the Accenture Songs, and they handle the garaging for them, or other studios. Mm-hmm. We actually never touch CAD data. Interesting. Maybe on a launch project where they say, oh, this is the rim and it needs to be, so we're like, okay, then we go and rent the Fred version for 4 weeks. Right. But we don't do data conversion. There's people who do that very well. Same thing, like the trees, let the pros do it instead of one person doing everything. Data is getting better, but still always, it can be an issue depending on the manufacturer. Sure. Yeah. But obviously it's important to have optimized data to be able to create a decent shot, right? Because if the input is bad, then you're just messing around with cleaning stuff up. So
sure.
But it doesn't happen so much anymore. Interesting. But that is,
What about the style of car photography? Have you seen that sort of change over the years?
Yeah, it changes, and it's slower than, let's say, lifestyle stuff, right? And but also we kind of like we see style repetition. So these days in Europe, at least, or internationally, there's a trend of putting hip models in front of cars, which that trend was there before, So it's going in cycles. But one, let's say BMW starts it, or Mercedes starts it, and then you see it trickle down to the other brands. And the, let's say, authentic lifestyle, anti-CGI, maybe, if you want to put it that way. Mm-hmm. You see that happening, which has a marketing relevance, but also obviously it's people working on those things, right? People want to travel, people want to do stuff, and it's difficult to find creatives that enjoy talking about reflections on rims for 45 minutes. Okay. And the clients do enjoy that quite a bit. So, so the agencies probably need also to keep it interesting for their teams. And it might be a right thing. And I think there is different visual asset needs depending on the customer journey. So what we do when you do a launch, you don't need talent in the picture because it's the first portrait of the car, right? You don't want to connect it to somebody's face or body or style. So it's all about the car, and going downstream in the life cycle of the vehicle. Yeah, you want to show the family, you want to show it on location, you want to show it, whatever it is, shopping, camping, business, you want to tell those stories.
Right.
And that is fine. But also for running footage. So we're looking at things, and I was evangelizing for a long time. I said, hey, we can do everything. Why don't you? We can do everything. And then I realized, okay, people don't want that. And just because we can do it, you don't have to do it, right? It should make sense in a bigger picture. So it makes sense in a launch situation where you don't have the car. The car is secret, so you don't have to pay the 3 security people watching the car not being photographed, because that is a reality.
Yeah.
A good thing that we have is people are more conscious about environmental footprints and stuff. So flying a car from Germany to LA, yes, in the big picture, maybe it doesn't make a sense, but is it really necessary?
Sure.
If you can get a picture or film quality in full CG that is matching what you could shoot.
That was always the dream, right? It was like to do digital running footage, because it took forever for that to happen. Everyone said, oh, we'll just do it all CG, but people were resistant to doing it. There was always a big crew that wanted to take this car and fly it all over the world and have this running footage over and over. And they were paid a lot of money to do it, right?
Yeah. And it is, there might be situations where it's okay to do it.
Sure.
But when you look at the landscape, what the manufacturers need to output, I think they're, they're selling themselves short, if that is a sentence that makes sense. I don't know. Because essentially, they're shooting everything in Cali, right? I mean, because infrastructure is there, everybody knows the location, precision drivers, makes sense.
Sure.
But we heard quite a lot lately that people, the dealerships in Florida are like, okay, guys, fine, but we're in Florida and we grew 150% the last 15 years. Business is here. You see mountains in Florida? I'm sorry.
Right.
Any mountains here? Can I? And they're like, can I have some palm trees? Can I have some ocean? Can I have something that looks like here? Right.
Sure.
Or you go up to northeastern, New York, Boston, these areas. Sure. Right. Looks very different. So it is coined localizing, I think. So this is actually what's happening. What will happen more and more for example, with what we're offering, manufacturers could get it for less than what they pay for going out and shooting. Plus the advantage is like, you can change colors, you have all the CG advantages in the next step. Mm-hmm. You control light, you control season. It's all great.
Trim packages.
Trim packages, facelift, updates, all these things. So,
right.
But interestingly, the car world moves very slow. Right, it's like a big ship. So somebody needs to make a decision and say we're going left, and it's like, it doesn't happen rapidly. So, but I think it will happen more and more. And interestingly, since AI is in the market, we're like the old school guys. That's a very funny experience. You're like, oh yeah, CG. We know CG. It's not stealing jobs. It's good old CG.
Well, how has AI sort of affected the market? Are people just creating renderings through prompts of the car? Because you can't get the precision of the car in an AI, right?
No, I've seen interesting solutions where people create location backplates. Totally doable, I think. You have the car, render and create backplates. But for a finely controlled output, and this is what you need with car clients. It's like a normal job is going through, 4 layers at least, right? So you have the art director, creative director, client 1, client 2, so 4. Sometimes you have client 3 in these layers. So all these people, pictures keep going up and down these elevators, right?
Right.
So you need a lot of control over the picture to be able to answer the needs. And it's very, and I'm not kidding. It's like 40-minute conversation about reflections on wheels is normal.
I know. I've done those conversations. I know exactly.
Yeah, so you're not going to say, "Oh no, the prompt didn't work." They're like, "Yeah, do I care?" It's like,
Yeah, no. And I want the spokes to be exactly like this on the wheel. So.
Exactly. Now it's like conversations about what do we see on the tire and how much of that information is like crazy. But I mean, it's normal when you're in it. When you step back, you're like, "Ooh, these people are not normal."
Right. Yeah. And the complexity of just like headlight renders, just to make those, very complicated.
And it's great to see technology advancing. We always said it's great because we know technology is coming towards us. We were sure of that. We knew, okay, the render time today is not going to be the same in 6 months. Right. So software gets updates, or the denoisers that are in V-Ray 6. Awesome, love it.
Yep.
And then AI is great, technology is great, but this solves timing issues, or it frees up time for us to focus more on the creative.
Okay.
So what we've always wanted, and we're getting close to it, is in a way real time, but not necessarily Unreal real time or Vantage. It's not about the real time of the computer feedback, but what we are already getting with V-Ray 6 and with the Sky system, that was the missing link for me. Putting
with
in
the clouds,
the colors react and it interacts. So it's really one system, and what you see is what you get. And I can wait a minute for a preview in IPR because I know what I'm going to get. Right? It's like looking at a Polaroid, and it's like boom, you try it, you see it. It's creative heaven, I think. I love it.
Yeah, it's not sitting there waiting for that one shot that you have of the sunset.
Right, that, and not, it's like, oh no, okay, we'll do it in Photoshop, we'll take this, we take that. It's like, interestingly, with, V-Ray 6 and a location that we've created, it's like shooting.
Sure.
But you can stop the sun.
Yes.
Everything waits for you. Everything waits for client feedback.
Yeah.
You can keep everything, like, the camera needs to, especially with footage, with moving cameras. You have a moving car, you have a moving camera, you have fully built location. So you're handling a lot of different elements and being able to basically stop time and say, okay, this is cool. I want the same thing, f-stop 4. Oh, okay, this is cool. Let's do focus pull. How great is that?
Yep.
No?
For sure. For sure. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about locations. Do you guys, when you guys are looking at locations, do you guys have a library of locations? Do you make custom locations for customers? How does that work for you guys?
We do build custom locations for clients when it's, for example, a private home. We learned in reality it's really difficult to get an exclusive private home. And in Los Angeles, I'm sure there's new houses by now, but there was this one house, and you go there, and the next day somebody else is there, and somebody else. You see tapes on the ground from the last crew, right? So it's and you have the same situation in Cape Town and southern Spain. Those are the three main car spots in the world.
Interesting.
And who builds his house so that you can take a great car shot in front of it? Not many people.
Right.
So building private homes, staging private homes always was a big thing. And when the client is requesting a location that we do not have, we build it, but we don't necessarily charge for it because we put it in the library. So, and Obviously we have coastal roads, we have forests, we have winter scenes, we have all these things, and the team has built them so procedurally that we can, if we need to, we can change the road structure, right? So you can, I need a left turn, and ecosystem goes with it. So you have these solutions that help us to light the car. We have solutions to, open up shoulders of roads so we get a good reflection in the car, but only there where we need it, right? So doing those things. And I don't know if you've seen it. This is our latest thing, is the Scope City thing. Did you see that? We basically
I heard about it. So, but tell us about it.
So essentially, we city background's always a big thing, right? So we struggle to find buildings. You hand build stuff, and you buy stuff, and the quality is mix and match. So it was very frustrating. So the city build has always been a holy grail, I think, of location build in CG. And COVID gave us time to figure it out. I mean, good and bad.
Sure.
But this is basically what we, focus the team on. Said, okay, let's work on that. So it's an interesting, good project. And also looking at it this year, we realized we went a bit overboard. If I had known it, if I had budgeted for it, I would have never done it. Right? It's like
right.
It's like 25,000 hours or so went into the thing.
Building the city?
Yeah, building a tool that builds cities.
Right.
But I ignored it for many, many reasons. And now we have this tool we call Scope City, and it's built on a Houdini Maya V-Ray pipeline for us. But we're working on solutions so that we can output it to different render engines as well. Unreal obviously is pretty popular. We have friends that are using Arnold, and
sure.
Right now we're thinking Omniverse might be the solution to be able to supply all the people that they wanted and needed. So we're talking to NVIDIA about that. So it's also very interesting.
Right.
But so essentially we have a tool that builds procedural cities that are generic somewhat, which in our world is great because you don't have IP issues.
Right.
And we have the capability of building customized cities for every OEM or every car manufacturer. So Audi City, Mercedes City, we could do that because this is what they want. You show it to them, and they're like, this is great, but I want it exclusive. And if you hand build it, you're like, okay, how much am I going to charge for this? It's like, So with the machine,
you can make an exclusive. Yeah.
Yeah, we can, reconfigure it, output it, and then essentially lock the numbers that are only for Audi and say, okay, nobody else can use that, which is pretty interesting. And a lot of Archviz people reached out, also super interesting. And I wasn't aware they need cities.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Well, what are these cities are obviously procedurally generated, right? And so do you say, okay, here's a city, and then boom, you just give them the mesh of the city with all the stuff, or do they still have the ability to customize it once they have their city?
Well, they can customize it. I think a lot of work needs to go into prepping and propping the location. So essentially, we're giving them an empty city.
Gotcha.
You have the buildings, you have the roads, you have all the detailing figured out there in a very efficient file. Mm-hmm. So, like a city, not one city block, a few city blocks is only 120 megabytes and only has 1 gig of texture file. So it's really performant.
It's pretty,
Because, the team has built, so it's instancing, obviously, for the geometry. But what is super successful is we built a layered material system.
Okay.
where all the materials see each other. So if you also, and it's procedurally texturing stuff, but you don't need very high-res textures to do that. That's what keeps it very efficient. And it's not like the decals that they use in game engines. It is geometry, so displacement. So if you have a crack on the road, the crack will see the line and break it and do all these things. But that's a fairly complex material system. And the challenge there was to calibrate it so that it works for all the different use cases.
Sure.
But then, and on the texture side, we're using Substance Designer.
Yep.
So also procedural. So you can update, you can say, I don't want red brickstone, I want yellow brickstone. Or, changing these things and delivering as a V-Ray scene was super successful also. So we shared a test file with quite a few people over the last 6-7 weeks. So I'm looking forward to see what they do with it, because we had shared it with a friend and he came back and we were like, oh, wow, cool. Other people can do cool stuff as well. We're like, oh, let's share with everybody. So we put it out on LinkedIn, and now I'm excited to see what comes back from that.
Yeah. You should try. I'm sure you guys are looking at some stuff that we're doing with Vantage, but Vantage now has gotten very interesting and what it can manage. So I'd be curious to see if you guys have tried some of those things as well.
No, we haven't. I have Vantage. I met the guys at FMX, and they showed it to me, but we didn't. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to really test run it. Our TD wasn't available. Was busy doing other stuff. But I definitely want to try it. But because I was like, well, Vantage is cool, but if I can hit IPR and I see a preview and then I just send it off to render, I was happy with that so far. I didn't need the more speed, for me at least, to and so, but obviously something that we have not explored enough. But I'm sure it's going to work with that anyways. It's a V-Ray scene, right? So it's
we're doing a lot of interesting experiments with Vantage because it's because of its interactivity, it sort of opens up the door to more possibilities. So I'd be curious to see, and especially also because we can manage a lot more geometry than rasterized renderings or rasterized solutions. So that's also something that's interesting. But it's a fascinating thing. I think it's fascinating that you guys have created an entire city system started with car photography.
Well, film. Photo and film. But this is what do they say? It's like when the pain is large enough, you try to find medicine, and our city pain was very high producing stuff,
right?
And it is a necessity for car, film, and photo, and having a bad location, like with any bad asset, you have to shoot around it, and when you have to shoot around it, always your picture suffers, right? And it comes back, and the clients are unhappy, and CG is bad. So it's a way to deliver good quality to the clients, right? But again,
I think there's only so many shots that you can do inside of the 2nd Street tunnel in Los Angeles. It always looks the same.
But that is a very good example. It's the same thing with many other things that you probably don't recognize if you're not in the market. But it's like again and again, and I know that location. It's like, but I don't know. Somehow they can say, "Oh, I'm the only person here today. It's good enough for me." It's my reality. But I definitely think, our belief is that the location is a supporting actor, but like supporting actors in film, incredibly important. If they're not good, they just pull everything down.
Sure.
If they're good, they help the hero shine more. And So we're starting to build, the business of location licensing, because we know we cannot do every job. We're a small crew.
How big are you guys?
We're like 10 people.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
And
so are you going
to?
Okay, so you're looking to license locations, but what about licensing the actual city builder application?
Yeah, we're talking about that as well, but the conversations we had is like, what is your SLA? I'm like, what? Service level agreement? No, I'm not. No. If you have problems, don't call me. Figure it out.
Right.
This is what we do.
Right.
No, we're not a software company, but there is. We're looking at maybe a solution that might work out. We'll see. To build an app on Omniverse. That seems to be an option. So where we say, okay, this is our things, and then they can help us put together an app so that you can maybe say, Scope City in Omniverse, you can go in and output your own city. So,
right.
But is it a business? I don't know. It's how many people need cities? I don't know.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you're actually discovering that yourself, right? So you're discovering the need for that and where people are doing it for sure.
Yeah. Well, we know, our friends and other studios, like, all of us have experienced it, right? You need something now because somebody has changed their mind, or, the deadline is too short. So we're thinking, well, okay, if they know they can license a Scope Coastal Road for so many bucks, and all right, that's going to be fine. One problem solved, so I can focus on cameras and light, or getting it done. I think that would be cool for the community, and we would, we said let's do that because we have, for example, we built a great desert, haven't used it for 18 months. It's a shame. It's a great desert.
It'll come back into fashion.
But somebody probably has built another desert, right?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, desert obviously is not so difficult, but city. If you have a few ready-made cities where you can log on and say, let me grab this location, put the car in it. I had, there was a young lady from Nairobi. She requested the scene, and she's a virtual fashion designer.
Okay.
Has done cool stuff, right? She's like, can
Right.
I have it as a location? I'm like, yeah, cool. It's like, that is, I think, super interesting, super exciting. It's also for me, going outside of cars and talking to other people.
Right.
And, highlights on wheels, which is fine. I'll do it. But there's another world out there, it seems.
Yeah. And what about these cities? I mean, is there a specific style that you have? Do you have if you have an old medieval city, or do you, or is it mostly modern cities right now?
Right now, it's, the one that we have is, the main one is like Lower Manhattan. So
Gotcha.
You have that. And then we have, different building types. So we have, at this point, we have 17 different arch types of buildings that Houdini can use to build different shapes and heights and base layouts.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say, I only want these 3 buildings, or you say, I only want the brick stones or no brick stones. So you can configure that when you put it together. And we have 2 systems. One is where you go into an OpenStreetMap file, or you download it, and Houdini can read it, so it knows how high the building should be and what the plots are, and builds based on that. And then we have a second approach that we named Centerpiece, where you art direct it. So essentially you just pull cubes and say, I want a building here, I want a building there. When you design a shot, especially for stills, you're like, okay, this is the hero angle. I want, this is where I want my buildings. And then you give that to Houdini, and it outputs the location. I mean, it's quick. It works pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there were systems, there were similar ideas that were being thought about way back in the day when they did the first Spider-Man, when he was swinging through the city and they were using Houdini to sort of procedurally generate these cities that he was swinging through. It was interesting.
But then also, didn't they photograph a lot of buildings and map it onto the buildings and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
It was a huge undertaking. Yeah.
I worked on The Day After Tomorrow, and that was all just photography, buildings and buildings and buildings and buildings and buildings.
Yeah.
I made a lot of buildings. So.
Yeah, and in a way, Houdini, one of the guys actually learned Houdini.
Yeah.
But also there, having such a specific task, I think it helps to learn the software.
Sure.
And I remember when I first saw Houdini a couple of years ago, it was just code. There was no user interface, right? There was just maybe
Houdini's always had a user interface. Yeah.
Yeah, but to me, but it looked like everybody's coding all the time. I don't know, maybe they still do it and they don't show me. But it's the interesting thing is like essentially what we're doing is very similar to what the gaming companies are doing, right? We watch what they do and more or less copied it. But the difference that we added to it is, how you get even more resolution. So essentially we could output 16K files out of Substance if you are, very, very close to a spot. Finessing those things and obviously building the city from the car away, I would say. So our tarmac is fantastic, right? It's like, so you can go very, very close, and then the walkways and obviously the buildings you can get close as well. But, the combination of efficiency and detail and variation, that is what took a long time. And it is not so much, there's not huge secret sauces. It's more like calibrating until it really works together well, right?
Right.
And, deleting mistakes, making sure the rule base, it doesn't build super funny buildings, right? It's just reducing what it does. So that's what we focus on. But it's been a big adventure over 3 years. So
So what is your next? I mean, obviously you're exploring all these different things. So what's next for you? What are you guys looking for?
Well, the next big thing is like we'll see if the community, if the clients are interested in the locations. There is quite a lot of interest in the city, which we will definitely make available. Just trying to figure out how. And also maybe into the gaming community, we had a few calls there, also very interesting. It's like, without naming names, but people from very big studios where we keep looking up to, they called and said, oh, okay, this tool is just a bit more crazy than anybody here has approved to build, right? So it's there seems to be potential that the big studios might license it to build the next Spider-Man. Maybe, I don't know. Right.
Yeah. Well, I know that the guys in Insomnia Games, they had a huge amount of work that they did in their cities and what they were doing there because of that. So very interesting. Very interesting.
We will keep localizing, build more archetypes so you can have it more Asian, more Middle Eastern, whatever it might be. That more, Europe obviously is pretty difficult with the old buildings to make them procedural.
Or make it look like Malta or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
But we'll see if that. For now, we keep focused on cars and see how it extends from there. Or when we when somebody has a clear need, obviously we'll try to build it.
Yeah, interesting how you guys continue to innovate in all of this because you've started very much with a very traditional issues and you've seen all the problems, and sort of solving those problems one by one has been pretty cool.
No, it was a fun ride.
Yeah.
Fun ride.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Faruk. I really appreciate it. I'd love to, learn more. We'll obviously put links on all of this stuff on our page so people can see it. But yeah, the procedural cities is a great conversation. I really appreciate understanding that. And going back to car stuff, I love doing, it's very tedious, but it was kind of cool at the same time of just making that car look perfect.
We enjoy it. It's and again, the power that CG gives us to get it really precise is great. And even with that, it's still difficult enough.
Sure.
I always like to say it's like classical music, right? Bach is Bach. You know the notes. Everybody agreed on those, but everybody, it gets reinterpreted, and you need to do it again and again and get it done every time.
Right.
So that is the interesting challenge.
That's a great way to put it. So, well, thanks for joining us, and I hope you're well, and we look forward to seeing all the cool stuff you guys are doing in the future.
Cool. Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for having me.